Hello everyone. Hello. Welcome. Welcome to join us. Here we are with Jamie and we are with yes. Hi. Hi Jimmy.
Hey,
Welcome to join us. So here Jimmy will give us I believe it will be quite interesting talk for all of you guys. So here's the stage for you, Jimmy.
thank you so much. And welcome to this session about two of my favorite things, gadgets and Blazor. I really love doing this session, but it's not always easy to fly with a suitcase full of gadgets. I have done that actually. As developers, we go through a bunch of different stages, or at least I have. The first stage was when I was 7 years old and I got my first computer. I remember I sat down, 10, print Jimmy, 20, go to 10. And that was my code. I got the computer to do stuff. And this was actually my first app, and it is available on GitHub if you want to download it. This was also the moment when I decided, or perhaps even realized, that I wanted to become a developer. The second stage was when calculators and phones came out. That I'm sounding so old right now. But it's a very special feeling to deploy something to another device, a device that you can have with you, to carry with you. It's a small screen. Perhaps you can't do all the things that you are used to on a bigger screen. The third stage was when I found out about circuit boards, Raspberry Pi, Arduino, Arduino. I remember I ran to my wife and I said, look, it blinks. And she was like, yeah, so? No, you're not getting it. The LED is blinking. It's blink on, off, on. See, I did that. That is my code. Apparently, that was a bigger moment for me than for her, but I was so happy just getting that LED to blink. The next step was when I realized that I can control other manufacturers' devices, getting measurements from sensor, turning on and off lights. And this is what we're going to talk about today. How we can control devices through Bluetooth and a little bit more using Blazor. So we are going to talk about how does Bluetooth Low Energy work. We are going to talk about how we can figure out the Bluetooth protocol. We are going to write some code, and we're going to control some stuff, and we're going to control even more stuff. So that's what the plan for today. My name is Jimmy Engström. I work for a company called Cab Group, that was hard to say, in Sweden. I'm a Microsoft MVP, and I've been running Blazor in production since the release of Blazor back in 2019. I run a podcast together with my wife, and we also have a Twitch and a YouTube channel. So if you want more Blazor content and stuff like that, please check that out. We talk to a lot of interesting people on the podcast. We invite them on the stream, and sometimes we do a little bit of live coding as well. Right now, we're building a Blazor call for paper site, and we just moved to a new house. So we're working on getting back to that original schedule, but please check us out if you're interested. I've written a book on Blazor. This is his first edition. This is the second edition, and the third edition just came out last week. And these are the only 3 Blazor books with raccoons on the cover, which is obviously the most important part. But enough about me. Let's talk about Blazor. So how does web Bluetooth work? Well, first we need to talk about where can we use web Bluetooth. So web Bluetooth is an experimental technology, and the browser supports really shows that. So Edge, Chrome, and Opera does support web Bluetooth. Internet Explorer, I don't know why this is still on my slides, because people, if you're using Internet Explorer, stop doing that. Firefox and Safari does not support Web Bluetooth. Now, sadly, this means that iOS devices will not be able to use Web Bluetooth at this point. So I'm not a fan of JavaScript, but I do love gadgets. So I set off building a Blazor library using JavaScript to control Bluetooth devices. So it's out there, there's a NuGet package for that, and I'm going to show you how to use it. But before we start getting into code, we need to understand how Bluetooth Low Energy works. So what I love about Bluetooth Low Energy is that you can ask the device what it can do. I mean, that's perfect for developers. It's kind of a built-in documentation. So a Bluetooth Low Energy device can tell you what services it has. It has always one service, at least one service, and they are identified by a GUID. There is an organization called the Bluetooth SIG, the Special Interest Group, that has defined and named a bunch of these services and also created documentation for them. There's also a bunch of these services that are not defined by the Bluetooth SIG, but we will return to that in just a bit. Every service has at least one characteristic. You can think of them as methods or events. Each characteristic has a way to access them. So for example, you can read, write. Think about them as methods or properties, perhaps. And then we have indicate or notify, that a little bit more like events. Let's take a look at one Bluetooth SIG specification. So the special interest group has defined the battery service. So it must have a battery level characteristic. And the battery level characteristic must have read and may have optionally notify. Great. So if you look at this in a little bit of another graph here, we have the Bluetooth device. It has a battery service. It has the battery level characteristic, and you can read from it, and you may get notifications. Cool. So when it comes to figuring out the protocol, and this is honestly the most fun part, there are a couple of options that we have. But when we get down to it, it's all about bytes back and forth. You get notifications with bytes, and you can read or write bytes. So bytes, basically. So we can figure out by manually figuring them out. And I will show an example of that. We can use the documentation. Not as fun, but okay. We can intercept the Bluetooth signals. Kind of fun, and I will show you how I did that as well. These Bluetooth internals used to work, but they are actually not working anymore. So I'm not sure why, if it's just my version of Edge or not. So let's skip those, and I'm just going to talk about the services that we found inside of our Bluetooth scale. So I have this Bluetooth scale. I found it on NetOnNet. This is an Anderson scale, but in fact, it's Senson that makes them. So I checked what kind of services it had. So we have the Senson scale, and it has a service called generic attribute. The generic attribute makes it possible for us to ask the device what it can do. Then we have the device information containing device name, manufacturer, and so on. Now my PowerPoint is not working as I wanted to. There we go. So, and then we have the generic access. And this one contains name, addresses, and stuff like that. But then we have the last one. The last one that is not defined by the Bluetooth SIG. The one named 000FFB. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to go through that whole thing. But it's usually the first segment that differs. The rest of it is usually the same. What I did was that I looked deeper into that. And I found out that it has two characteristics. So I tried accessing them, and I figured out that they both have write and they both have notify. So I connected everything. I put something on the scale, and one of them gave me some data back. I got 10 bytes back. Awesome. So it's probably that one. So the first step was the baseline. So this is what I got back. And I didn't put anything on the scale. So 0 grams. Looking at the data, I'm going to assume that the data I get back is going to be 0. So looking at that, well, we got 5 things that was 0. Awesome. So now I had an energy drink beside me. So I put that on the scale. It just happened to weigh 235 grams. So now these values changed. And we got one on byte 5 that is 235. Awesome. So we can assume that is the value of the scale. So now I reset the scale and I remove the energy drink. Now it should be minus 235. And I still got 235 on byte 5, but byte 7 and 9 changed. So I'm thinking byte 7 or 9 might be a sign byte. Now I put 120 grams on the scale, and suddenly byte 4 changed. So after testing this back and forth, I figured out that byte 4, 5, and 7 are the most important ones. So what I ended up was byte 4 times 256 plus byte 5, and then byte 7 would be whether or not it's positive or negative. So this next demo is going to be legend, wait for it, dairy. I really love puns, so I just couldn't leave this one out. So let's check this out in code. So I'm going to jump to another Visual Studio that I have over here. So here's the code for the Anderson scale. And the first thing we need to do is we need to add a NuGet package. I've already done that. So the next thing we need to do is to add a namespace. So let's do that. So we're going to use the blossom.bluetooth namespace. Then to access Bluetooth devices, we need to use the Bluetooth navigator. This is the same name it has in JavaScript, but in this case, C# code. So we're going to inject that one, the iBluetooth navigator, and we're going to call it navigator. Sweet. Next, we need a variable. We need a variable to hold the weight measurement. And this is in grams. So we don't need any decimals or anything like that. So let's do an int. And we're going to say that the weight is 0. So if we don't have any weight, it's going to be 0 by default. And then we want to show that in the UI somehow. So let's add that in the UI as well. Great. So down here, we have the service ID that I found and the characteristics ID that I found. So I'm just going to hard code them into the app like that. Everything is controlled by the web browser. This is a very secure way to access Bluetooth devices. So I need to request a device. I need to tell the web browser what kind of device I want and what services I want access to. So we can create a filter. In this case, it's a request device query. And in that, we're going to add a filter, and we're going to say that I'm interested in all the services, and in this case, just one of this type, of this GUID. Then it's time to request a device. So this is going to trigger the web browser to show me some devices. So let's do that. So we're going to get a device. We ask the navigator to request a device, and we send in that filter. And since this is a scale, I can't really send values to it. I'm more interested in getting values from it. So we're going to set up a notification. So we're going to set up a notification from that device, send in the service ID, the characteristic, and then set up the event and listen to that event. And the value notification method looks like this. It takes in an object, a sender, and then it takes a characteristic event args, because there's nothing else happening than bytes sending back and forth. So this is the same for all applications using Bluetooth. We're going to get the data. We are going to get the weight, and that was 256 times byte 4 plus the data from bytes 5. And then if byte 7 is 1, we're going to reverse that and get a minus value instead. Then we need to call state has changed, because if you never used Blazor before, this is going to happen on another thread. So I need to notify Blazor that something changed. So we're going to do that as well. So let's run this and see if it works. Takes a little bit of time to build, apparently. Come on. Are you even doing it something? Yes, it is. Can you do it faster? Browser, let me bring that over here. Oh, put it there. So here we have the Anderson scale. So this is the page that we just built. So I'm going to click connect. I'm going to touch the scale over here. And hopefully it will wake up. There we go. So send some food instead of Anderson scale, because that's how it identifies. We're going to click pair. And now when I press the scale here, we'll see that the value updates in more or less real time. Isn't this kind of cool that we can get these values inside of a web browser doing it like this? Bring back the presentation. Let's do the pun again. There we go. So I find these awesome Bluetooth devices all over the place. And this is from a manufacturer called WebHID. It's a robot manufacturer that built toys. And they have released a whole bunch of robots. And I think I have not all of them, but pretty close. This is called RoboSapien or MIP. And you can use the same library to connect to those as well. So I talked to WebHID back in the day, and they sent me the Bluetooth protocol for the RoboSapien robot. And shortly after that, they released a protocol for their MIP droids as well. So in this case, I didn't have to figure out the protocol. I got the protocol from WebHID. And if you want to check that out, we have the MIP protocols on GitHub, so you can check that out. So in the project that I'm showing you, the Blossom.Bluetooth project, I have one of these MIP droids or code for controlling one of these MIP droids. A little bit tricky to do that on a table here. So this is how we can control that robot, and you're free to use it from that project. I think these robots are really, really cool. And there's another one that looks similar as well. But let's talk about how to control the other robot that we can do on our table. Let's see if I can just quit. There we go. So I'm going to bring up Visual Studio again here. There we have it. And for the RoboSapien, I got a bunch of codes or bytes. And again, it's all about bytes. So here are all the bytes that we need to be able to cover for the full control. So we have a bunch of different things. We can lift the arm and stuff like that. And if we jump into the RoboSapien demo here, we need to add the RoboSapien to our project. Same thing here. We already have the service. We already have the characteristic. But in this case, we're going to do it a little bit different. We're going to request a device, and we're going to add a filter. So far, same. But in this case, we're going to say, I want the device with the name RoboSapien Blue. Cool. And in this case, we need to also add an optional service because RoboSapien Blue is the name of the device. It doesn't tell me what service I want to access. So I also need to tell the browser, in this case, what service I want to access. And then I can say, request that device of that type. It's up. There we go. And then it's all about sending a command. So last time we read the command, now it's time to send the command. So RoboSapien.write value. And we're going to send in the service that we want to send it to and the characteristic we want to send to, and then followed by the byte that we want to send, or the bytes in this case. So let's see if this works. I'm going to wake him up here. What is... do that again. There we go. So here we have the RoboSapien page, and let me show you in... Oh, that was not what I wanted to do. Start that again. Go. So if we take a look at this page, we'll see that we have a couple of things that we can do with the RoboSapien. We can lift this arm, we can burp, and oops. So let's connect to the robot first. So hopefully it will show up here. Oh, look at that, RoboSapien Blue. Let's connect to that one. And I'm going to... Right. So here we have him, the robot. So let's try and lift his arm. Hey, look at that. It's moving. And we can make him burp. And we can make him fart. For those who know me, knows that I find this hilarious. So now we can control this robot. We can even walk back and forth and stuff like that. Now, I haven't implemented that in this case, but there are lots of stuff that we can do with this robot. We're going to jump back to the presentation. Now, I found this Deadpool's head. And Deadpool 3 is coming out pretty soon, I believe. So this is super current, I guess. And I just felt that, you know what, I need to play around with this head. So in this case, I didn't have access to the Bluetooth protocol. It's a little bit more tricky to talk to Deadpool's head. So it was pretty hard to figuring all these things out. So I thought there must be a way to kind of sniff Bluetooth packages, and luckily there are. So there are hardware options. There is an open source software for Ubuntu called Blues, and there you can also enable Bluetooth HCI on an Android phone. Now, I don't have an Android phone, or I do, but I also have an iPhone. And inside of Xcode, there is something called a packet sniffer, I believe. Packet logger. So it's possible for me to sniff the Bluetooth protocols. So it looks something like this. So I hooked everything up and I started the application for the Deadpool head, clicked around, and I got these kinds of values. So 17003902. Huh, what could that mean? So I started pressing buttons and trying back and forth. And at some point, I reached a level where I think the head can do everything it's supposed to. So let's take a look at how we can talk to Deadpool's head. Let's bring up Visual Studio again. So inside of the project, we also have the Deadpool's head demo. And it also has the documentation for that on the GitHub page. You can check that out and see exactly how to access that. So in this case, we are sending commands, and I'm Deadpool is 25 and 2. And if we go down here and we just check these out, we'll see that we have a service ID, we have a write characteristic, and we have a notify characteristic. So if I lift the head and it even has a button underneath, it will get notifications. When it comes to sending things, we also have a timer, because if we're not I think it's every 5 seconds, not notifying the head that, hey, you know what, there's still an app connected, still an app, it's going to disconnect and we're not going to get that, be able to connect to it anymore. We have the same thing here. We're filtering on a name. We're setting up the notify. And when we're connecting the app, we need to send a couple of bytes. This is something I figured out when sniffing the protocol. And when we're sending it to the device, we stop the timer because I don't want the timer to kick in while we're talking to the head. We're getting some bytes, 1700, that's a command, followed by a command and a section. So everything has a section, and it basically has 256, or it doesn't really, but it could have 256 different commands per section. And then we send or write the value, wait a little bit, waking it up. Oh, God. So my RoboSapien just went to sleep, and it scared the bejesus out of me. Let's turn you off, view aside. And we also need to say state has changed because some things might have changed, and we're updating the button in the UI also as well. So, and keeping it awake is just a matter of sending a keep awake command. So let's see if we can get Deadpool's head to talk with us. Let's bring up the Deadpool's head. And I mean, for those of you who know Deadpool, this is probably a super bad idea, but let's wake him up.
Sorry, wrong language mode. Hi, it's me, Deadpool.
So let's connect.
Uh-huh. So how does it feel to talk to someone IRL?
And as the real Deadpool, he never shuts up.
Great country or the greatest?
So let's connect.
See you out there, cowboy. Ooh. Using my app. See anything you like?
And I'm not using your app. I'm building this myself. So here I can say, I'm Deadpool, or I can make him say that.
Hi, I'm Deadpool's head. Excuse me, Deadpool. Different guy.
And I can click X-Men.
What X-Men universe is this? New people.
And my favorite one.
Oh, do you want some relaxing noises? Relax. Relax.
We can connect to these kinds of really cool devices by using Bluetooth. And I can show you the Microsoft robot as well here. So that's what he looks like. Let's jump back. So there are a bunch of different web APIs products that we can use. So we looked at Bluetooth. We also have WebHID, USB, and Gamepad. I've built a library for HID, which we're going to look at next. And I'm also working on one for USB. And there's another one that has built a Gamepad API that we will look at the end. So there's also the Blossom.HID. So HID means human interaction devices. So I got this busy light that is supposed to show whether or not you're busy. So it can sync up with Teams and show if you're in a call or something like that. Now, they have documentation. So I got that one and read up on it. But as you will see, I'll bring up my Visual Studio here, not that one, because I have more than one. There it is. So the busy light has a lot more stuff going on, but you will feel a little bit familiar because we are creating a filter. We are creating a HID device request option in this case. We are running something called request device, and we also need to open the device. So it's a little bit different, but it looks pretty much similar. And up here, we are injecting the HID navigator instead of the Bluetooth navigator. So if we run this application instead, we need to wait. Oh, something's happening. Where did you open? Have you opened yet? working on it. But there we go. Now it should be open somewhere. There we have it. So here we have the busy light, and I can list devices. So here I will get all the different devices that is already connected to my system and is already paired. So I can also click connect and get that busy light dialog so I can connect to it. So let me remove Visual Studio and remove the presentation. There we are. So here we have the busy light, and it's currently, well, black. Let's change that to something other than that, a red, for example. And I click change color, and boom, it's red. And let's do blue in case my sister watches this. She loves blue for some reason. And there we go, it's blue. So I can control these USB devices from my web browser using these libraries as well. Jump back. We also have Stream Deck. I love the Stream Deck. I'm not going to show you a demo of this because it takes a little bit of time to set up, but the cool thing here is imagine that you start Visual Studio or Office, and it can change to another set of buttons from the software. But imagine instead that you're going to a web page. Let's say that we are streaming from StreamYard, for example. So let's say that you go into that web page, and that web page says that, hey, you have a Stream Deck. Do you want to connect to that? And your web page takes over the Stream Deck, and now you can communicate that way. That is also in the samples that I have on GitHub. This is kind of cool, I think. So you can take over these devices, whether or not they're Bluetooth, whether or not they're USB or HID, it works. There is a guy called Junichi Sakamoto, a fellow MVP, that has made a gamepad library called toolbelt.blazor.gamepad. So suddenly we can connect our gamepads to the web browser. So I will bring up the web browser again. But if you remember how this presentation started, it started with me being 7 years old and getting my first computer. It was a ZX Spectrum, one of the left one here. And it really changed the way that I think about technology, and it made me a developer. I wouldn't have been a developer if I didn't have that computer. So when I became a developer, I thought, you know what? I'm going to build an emulator. I'm going to create this C#. I'm going to create this ZX Spectrum in C# instead. And this is my ZX Spectrum running on top of Blazor. So I'm going to start this one. I'm going to load up Manic Miner. I'm going to quickly turn off the audio because that is not. The ZX Spectrum is known for many things, but the sound is not that great. So if I run this application, And you might see me on the smaller image here that I have a gamepad. So I can move around inside of the game. Now, apparently my computer has OBS and Zoom and all of these other applications running, so it's a little bit sluggish, but normally this works really, really well. So we can control our web applications using a gamepad as well. I'm going to bring back the presentation. I still have it up here, I believe. There we go. If you want to learn more about all of these things that I've talked about, I have some of them on my GitHub. You can check out Junichi Sakamoto's tool belt. He has awesome components, not only this one. And if you want to try out the ZX Spectrum, you have zxbox.com. And with that, let's build something cool that communicates with gadgets. And please reach out on socials and let me know what you build. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Well, I have to say I'm so engaged with your talk because it's all about games and magic, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can also see from our friends, attendees, like people are really. Thank you, everyone, for for make this session so lovely. All right, I'm not gonna take more time because we have still have some minutes for the questions. So let's see. First one we got a short question. What robot or device is your favorite to develop for?
Oh, my favorite one. I think my favorite one that was most fun figuring out was definitely Deadpool's head, because it was so much work figuring it out. And it's really that part that is the most fun part.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. And we have another one. Will the Stream Deck head connection work even if the browser window doesn't have focus? Is there a full library available for that?
I actually don't know. In this sample, I was running Blazor server, and in that case, it would not work because if it doesn't have focus, it will spin down the signal or connection. But if we were running in WebAssembly, I believe it would keep going. I'm not entirely sure. It's not a limit of Blazor, at least. It's in that case limit of the web browser.
Okay, thank you. And the next one. What do you think about Blazor and its future after the features coming with .NET 8?
Yeah, I really like the things that came in .NET 8. There's a lot of stuff that solves a lot of the things that people said that was bad for Blazor, basically. We're not home yet. There's still some things that is not 100% when it comes to Blazor, but I think it's still the best SPA framework out there.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Jimmy. So I hope Ahmed, which is the friend who asked this question, you got something. Okay, and here's the last one from the question. Can we use Bluetooth only with Blazor Web Assembly? Can we also access it with Blazor Server or SSR?
We cannot access it with SSR because SSR is not interactive, but with Blazor Server, absolutely. Now, would I recommend you to do that? Probably not, because when you're using server, all of these requests is going to be sent back and forth. So the scale would send that data back as a signal or a WebSocket call. So it would be pretty chatty to do it that way. You can, but I would probably, in the case of Bluetooth or any type of client-side communication, USB, HID, or Bluetooth, I would probably do it as a WebAssembly component or application.
Cool. All right, I guess that's all for the questions. Also, it's almost the time. Thank you
Awesome.
again. A great thank to you, Jamie,
Thank
and for
you.
giving us such a insightful and fun talk. I
Awesome.
really
Thank you
love
so
your
much.
I really love your talk. I believe everybody were enjoying. I forgot to mention, actually, Jimmy is our old friend. It's not the first time Jimmy was with ABP conference. If you check last year, ABP conference 2023, I believe you will also find interesting topic from Jimmy.
Yeah.
So
I don't remember what I
thanks.
talked about, but something Blazor. I'm sure about that.
Yeah. Well, I can still remember like it was also a fun session. So if you wanna check, everyone, if you wanna check, you could maybe check our social media from YouTube, for example, or Twitter. You can find more insights about last year's Jamie session. And it's time to say goodbye. So see you for the next one, and hopefully to see Jimmy again for next year conference.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Have a great one to everyone, to everybody.